Teammates, first and foremost, if this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. Looking forward to having you back for some more. To my regular listeners, you already know how I get down right to the point. Today, we're doing a solo episode, and we are talking all about trauma bonds. All right, I'm going to say it again nice and slow so you, in case you missed it. Trauma bonds, which means it's trauma bond. The definition of trauma bonds is sort of the short definition of a trauma bond. Are two people are together, so they do not have to deal with the actual trauma that they have in their life, that they've had happen to them previously in their life. So they're two people together, and they're allowing each other to avoid a very uncomfortable, hurtful experiences from their past. That is the definition of a trauma bond. It does just before I get started, I got to tell you how I even came up. I didn't come up with the subject, but how I was even broached and why I decided that I was going to do an entire episode relating to how to avoid what a trauma bond is. In fact, not only this episode, but there's also an article that'll be out as well titled "How to Avoid Trauma Bonds." And I speak even today and in the article, I'll be talking to you guys from the perspective of a former football player, which is myself, and a person that played football in the most popular sport in America. But I played it in the DC, Maryland area. I played in Maryland, and I was exposed to the area in which I grew up in. I was exposed to a lot of politics, a lot of business, and things like that because the program that I played for has become nationally known, a nationally known powerhouse, nationally known program for producing players, and has a ton of exposure. Seeing that I was exposed to that, the trauma bond. I'm not saying I'm any more or less susceptible to a trauma bond than any other person out there. I'm just telling you from my perspective how I have been in several trauma bonds myself, and how I have learned to escape it and learn to avoid it altogether. And we'll dive into all that as I continue with my points today, right? So, but anyway, here's what got me on the subject. And believe it or not, it was just a couple days ago in which I first heard the term trauma bond. All right. I was interviewing a guy named Brad Chandler. All right. And he's the founder of a company named Limitless You. In fact, just yesterday, I had a conversation with his partner, Yvonne, and I'll actually be joining their group coaching program. And they actually reside out in the Northern Virginia area, which was really cool. And, it was really cool to kind of, chat with them and, the community that they're building. I'm looking forward to being a part of that as well. But anyway, it was during our interview, like live while we were recording, in which he said the word trauma bond. He said the word trauma bond. And if you see my reaction on the interview, you realize that was the first time I've even heard the term. And when he said it, though, I knew exactly what he meant. I didn't need extra clarification. I didn't need any definitions on what a trauma bond is. I knew exactly what he meant, and it was defined exactly the way I just previously defined it for you, which is two people. Again, two people who are basically together because they're allowing each other they're comforting each other to the point where when they're with this person, or from momentarily being able to help each other, like in certain moments, because you can't really solve these problems, fully until you as a person deal with your real pain. And again, I'm going to get to that in a second. But these trauma bonds allow individuals to kind of momentarily stop you from dealing with what your real pain actually is. All right. So today, again, I'm going to speak to you. I'm going to take you back to little Aswan. I'm going to take you back to little Aswan Cruikshank, teenage Aswan Cruikshank, even before teenage Aswan Cruikshank, all the way to even 20-year-old Aswan Cruikshank. It wasn't until maybe very recently, I'm talking maybe 3 or 4 years or less. I'm talking maybe 30, I'm going to be 36 probably by the time, be around 36 by the time this episode comes out. I'll tell you, it wasn't until probably around 30, 31 years old where I realized, hey, I have to genuinely deal with my own shit by myself, for myself, and then show up in the world and find my life partner. Not, and when I say find the life partner, that's the wrong verbiage. It's actually have the life partner be drawn to me. All right. I have to have the magnetic energy and I have to have the things out there. I have to be the person that my ideal life partner is drawn to. I do not need to go out chasing anybody anymore. What needs to happen is I need to deal with my shit, all right, deal with my shit, and then become the person, the magnetic person in which my ideal life partner is drawn to me. And I'm being very transparent and open and honest with you when I say that, because it's important that you do the exact same thing. You need to follow follow that instruction to a T. If you are going to go out and chase and pursue certain individuals for comfort, all right, you will lose. Even if you do look like you're winning when you got the girl or you got the guy or you got the person that you thought you wanted, if you feel like you're winning, it's actually you losing, because you need to deal with your own shit first and then attract the person that is made specifically for you. That's the important stuff, right? So back in high school, I say this started maybe from seventh grade all the way throughout high school. There was one specific girl that I had what I would say sort of an obsession for, right? And when I look back on it now, I realize how ridiculous that it actually was, and how how stupid it was. I have no other like word to say. It was just fucking stupid that I would pursue this specific girl. But anyway, couple things that were happening to me, couple things that were happening to me in terms of the way that I was growing up that made it so I was giving this specific girl that ended up being my high school girlfriend throughout throughout all the 4 years and all that shit. There was something on the inside that I was avoiding that made that I put this girl on a pedestal that she just simply didn't deserve. She wasn't as great of a catch as I gave her credit for. And it was because of the way I was being raised. And it was because of the way, more importantly, she was being raised and what was around her. And the way that our specific trauma, and again, we're kids, so I'm not here bashing her, and I'm not here bashing my former self. I'm just here telling you my story, because these things you just don't know. You just simply don't know what you don't know as a kid. You're raised in an environment and you're just going along with the flow. That's the way it is, right? So for me personally, a name like Aswan Crookshank, I was never accepted in the school system. I was never accepted among classmates. I never had any like large groups of friends, of people that were outside of the football program or a football team. Football is where I got my acceptance. Football is where I was able to find a group of friends. Football is where I was able to find a group of coaches. Football it's how I learned business. It's how I learned discipline. It's how I learned how to actually take in information and listen to people. All right. So football, I give football credit. The game, I give the game credit for all that. And seeing at how popular the sport actually is, that's something I just simply couldn't control. All right. It's just something that happened by chance. So again, football is how I learned a lot of the tactics, and that's what sucked up most of my attention. Not chasing the ladies and being some being some fucking male gigolo and having a bunch of women liking me and chasing after me and all that. My focus was 1,000% on the game of football. Here's why. Here's why my focus was there. Here's why I could keep my focus there. Number one, it was the coaches that I had. Again, I played for some legendary programs, some legendary coaches. Although I never needed like a surrogate father because I grew up with a father in the household, I did have coaches that were willing to take that role if I needed anything. If there was a day where, me and my dad was vibing or I was angry at him for whatever reason, whatever the reason was, these coaches were kind of the people that were willing to be the father figure type if need be. They were never pressuring me for any like real, hey, I just want this, that, and the third, because I didn't need it, obviously. But they were showing that they were willing to do these things. They cared to that point. They cared more than any, teacher I had in school and stuff like that, right? Also, my mother, excuse me, my mother grew up with four brothers, which means I had four uncles. And although these four uncles made their mistakes in their past and they have a past, they looked at me, who their nephew, someone that's productive, playing ball, growing up in the suburbs and all that. They looked at me as kind of an opportunity. They looked at me as someone that they had such a great deal of pride for, a great deal of hope for, a great deal of, my nephew Ozzy, that was my nickname, nephew Ozzy gonna make it. That's my sister's son and all that. The same way I have pride for my nephew whenever he's doing something great, it was the same way. And these were four men, four men. Understand, I'm saying this for a reason, because in a situation, being a young black boy where it's so stereotypical and so many young black boys grow up without a father, without a male influence in the household, I just named off at least about 10 to 15 different types of adult male influences. And I haven't even gotten to my father yet. That weren't in the household, but I could always call, and they're always showing that they cared. All right. There was always love when I saw them. Right. Now, before I get to my father, it was my mother and my sister who were at every single one of my football games, were there throughout everything. They took care of me from an emotional side. These were women, independent, type minded women, Caribbean women, grew up in a Caribbean household, more specifically the island of Trinidad. But my mother and my older sister took care of a lot of the things that I would need from a woman when you're talking about conversation, when you're talking about uplifting, support, cooking, doing laundry, and just having conversation, really asking me how I'm happy. I mean, my sister and I, we would do a lot of the things that normally a boy would do with their girlfriend. We would go to the movies, we would go have dinner. Again, my mother would drop me at practice. She'd be at every game. She can tell you, excuse me, she can tell you specifically how I played. She wasn't easy on me by any means. She would be telling me, look, you don't need to be missing tackles, all that kind of stuff. She'd give me a full-fledged scouting report. Again, things that I would have wanted, especially, I mean, look, if you've been listening to me for the past 10 minutes, the woman that I would want in my life needed to be into football, needed to love the game the same way I love the game, whether it's a game of football or whether it's just sports in general. The woman that I need in my life, you need to have some level of respect or admiration for sports, which means you need to have competed in it, right? And then I just named off all these influences. And then you had my father, who anybody, anybody who knew me around those school age years knew my father, because he was in everything. I mean, absolutely up my ass about every single decision that I've ever fucking made. All right. Me and him, every day growing up with that man, me and him went head to head. We'd go back and forth and back and forth. I mean, you talk about raising a man. Now I teach now, and I see the majority, a lot of the young children that attend the school I teach at, they're young black boys, and it's crazy to think about how I go at it with them the same way me and my father go at it. I mean, we went at it, which is the way it should be. It should be like that. I'm not here complaining. It should be a man raising a man in the household, and that man starts to grow up and have his own opinions and go at it with him, because that's what a man is supposed to fucking do. Man ain't supposed to be no damn simp and listen and taking directions from this one and that. No, man supposed to stand on some principles and raise his fucking son his way. That's the way it should be. All right. And that saying that is going to take me in a different direction because of what I normally see, but I'll digress. All right. So anyway, that's the environment I grew up in. All right. So seventh grade, I meet the girl that ended up being my high school sweetheart. And, I was in a committed relationship with her for pretty much all the way until I got to college my freshman year. And let me just tell you a little bit about how she grew up. Right. She grew up, she was born in New York. She moved here. She moved to Maryland. I want to say maybe elementary school age or whatever it was. And the only reason she and I even crossed paths was through a convenient. It was through conveniency because I had a friend that grew up near me. I had a friend that grew up right behind me, and we became like really. She was a female, and we became really close friends because she had an older brother, I had an older sister. We were in the same grade, went to the same school. We would walk home together, so we knew each other all the way from second grade, and we became really close friends. In fact, the former version of her. She was kind of the ideal woman, ideal girl that both of our parents expected me to end up with because at the time she was running track. Her parents were Jamaican, and she was very productive, at least when I met her during, those elementary school years and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, that wasn't the girl that became like she stopped running track, she started smoking weed and getting drunk and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, I met the girl that ended up being my high school sweetheart. I met her through her, and it was a mutual, convenient friendship type of a thing. So what happened was I pursued her for about 2 years because she started bringing her around and they were friends and all that. So I started seeing her. And for 2 years, 2 fucking years, this girl wanted nothing to do with me. I mean, she liked this guy, she liked that guy. She would completely embarrass me. And basically, I mean, if I would have been raised in a household that I'd say was regularly churchgoers or people that had a level of faith or they would talk about these types of relationships. Again, I grew up in a household that was dominated by this business, this conglomerate business, this huge marketing giant named football, and all we really talked about was business, football kind of a stuff. And we never really talked relationships. Had I been in a household in which we talked about these relationships, I would have been told, look, as Aswan, they called me Ozzy Aswan. Depends on, I guess, depends on how. In fact, they've got a little more serious when the subject matter became serious. So it would have probably been, yo, Aswan, leave this fucking girl alone. She has showed you her true colors. She shows you what she has shown you what she's all about. You need to move on to someone that's actually going to appreciate you, right? Now, that would have happened, but that conversation never happened. I had to figure that kind of shit out on my own, right? So here's what happened. She grew up in a household without a father. All right. She grew up in a household with an older sister and a mother, a single mother who had two daughters, which one was her. And both of these two daughters had different fathers. So, if I'm putting two and two together, and I wasn't thinking like this when I was back in those middle school, high school years, but her mother got pregnant twice by two different men, and two different men have let her have left her and said, "Look, you go raise those two kids on your own, and I ain't want nothing to do with you." That's what the household that she was being raised in. Now, again, I wasn't considering any of this. I wasn't thinking like this. I was just again the girl I was with, I'm thinking, look, she got some big ass titties and she's cute. I like her, so I'm gonna pursue her, right? So 2 years go by, and I don't make it to first base, and then it gets to the point where I get to good counsel, which is where I played my football, the national program that I was referring to. I get to good counsel. I start to catch my stride in a very difficult environment, but I catch my stride on the football team. I get voted captain. I'm starting to really find my place and really and get into a happy place. And then ding, 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 guess who calls? This same girl that I left alone. I mean, I left her alone for months. I just was getting over her. And then she calls me, and all of a sudden, she now wants to be with me. Now, again, keep in mind what I told you before. I was never really focused on chasing women's and being some gigolo and being that guy that has a lot of women. A lot of the things that I would need from a woman, I was fulfilled with in the household because my mother, my sister, and I would talk so very frequently. And she's only 5 years older than me, so I was around her friends, and I never really needed to go chase them in that way because I had that void kind of being filled when it comes to an intellectual standpoint, and she be at all my games and all that kind of stuff. So I never really asked difficult or asked any questions. I just figured, hey, the girl that I thought I really wanted to be with, all of a sudden she likes me. All right, it's a yes, right? It's a yes, whatever it is. And then we end up being together for, again, throughout my entire high school career. And as I look back on it, I realized that the male influences and the people I had in my life versus what she didn't have in her life with it, which is a father who was not in the household. There was no male, there was no real adult males to, guide her and teach her and, put her on the right track. I was filling that void for. I was filling that void for, and the two of us never really had to deal with our real pain when we were together. We would never have to deal with our trauma when we were together. And ultimately now, again, I realized it and I moved on. In fact, by the time I know I said we were together when I was a freshman in college, but at that point I was cheating on her and doing a bunch of shit that was reinforced, and I was falling deeper in to a trauma bond because all it really was with her was finally just someone to have sex with. The whole relationship was just a physical connection. And since then, starting from my freshman year all the way to, just all the way throughout, since then, it has been nothing but flings. It has been nothing but physical connections that I've had with other women. And that's really where I want to get you to, is understanding that because of this decision that I made, because of the mistakes and the situations that I've been a part of, I've had to I had to suffer with being in relationships that were only physical with multiple people. Now I can't speak for her because I lost touch with her after we broke up. It was my sophomore year in college, and then right after that, I was in another trauma bond with a girl who was a single mother. She was a single mother. She was working at the same gym that I was happened to be working at. Again, her son was a 2 year old. I was a 19-year-old kid. Didn't really know the kind of game she was playing and all that. But she's the mother from Trinidad. I had just torn my ACL. I was first time in my life I wasn't part of a football team and all that. And she just kind of showed up at the right time. And again, we were having our fling, and it was all just based on, now you're filling this void that now as I'm growing up and I don't have the football, I don't have the mom coming to the games and all that's not a part of the schedule. She just simply filled that void. Again, get the Stony Brook. It was the same kind of patterns that were being repeated over and over and over and over again. Stuff that I still to this day haven't gotten over yet. Some stuff I don't want to get over, but some stuff that I still have to work on to this day. And I'm explaining all of this to you. The reason I'm explaining all of this to you is for the simple fact of, it's important that you are aware of these things. It's important that you become very, very conscious of these things and very intentional about solving it. Very intentional about saying to yourself, I don't want to live in that kind of suffering. And I'm telling you now, I want to make sure I'm on the record explaining this to you as clearly as I possibly can. Not one other individual outside of yourself is going to be able to solve these problems for you. I'm going to let this one sit. Let this one sit for a second. Nobody is going to be able, the problems that you had growing up, all right? I'm going to re-emphasize and re-declare and repeat what I said growing up about myself, because it's true about every single individual in the entire world. You don't know what you don't know. You were born into this world. You grew up. You had absolutely no control about who was raising you, what kind of environment they were raising you in, or what they had to do, what your parents had to do. You have no fucking clue what your parents had to do before you got here, just to make it so you grew up in an environment, just to make it so you had a place to grow up, make it so you had food on the table, make it so you had clothes on your back, had shelter, all that shit. You don't know what your parents or whoever it was that raised you, you don't know what they actually have to go through just to put you in this world, just to make it so you make it through a day, which means you damn sure don't know what the fuck you don't know. All right. And for you to grow up and to want to be in a fulfilling relationship, a deeply committed relationship, raise a strong family, have a wonderful business, a wonderful job, be very fulfilled in your career and all that. If you want these things, you got to go back and solve your shit yourself. You can't go and expect anyone that you're going to meet anyone and they're going to just simply solve your problems because they're fucking you the right way, or because they're coddling to you the right way, because they're so obsessed with you and they think you're so fucking cute. That's not the way it's going to work. It's going to work because you man up. All right, man up or woman up. If I'm speaking to a woman right now, it's gonna work because you man up or woman the fuck up or be a fucking adult. Go back, look at your past, look at your previous relationships, look at the things that you've done the wrong way, and own that shit. Own that shit. Allow it to hurt. Allow it to be something that really pains you and really hurts you. Get the fuck over it and step into this world and say, now I'm ready to roll. Now I can do my work. Now I can be the man that I know the ideal woman or the ideal person that I want to attract into my life. I've become the person that attracts it. That's how it happens. That's how it works. Deal with your own shit. Don't expect anybody. I'm not, again, and that's what I was telling you, I'm not here complaining about all the women that I've been with, all the flings that I've had and all that kind of shit. I'm not here talking to you as if I'm angry at them in any way, shape, form, or fashion. I'm here talking to you as a man who's taken accountability for the wrong decision that I made personally, and I'm using myself as an example so you do the same exact thing. You go out and start holding yourself accountable for the mistakes you made, for the things that you knew you did the wrong way. All right. And I'll close you out with this because one of the things that I am so proud of about this very show is the amount of incredible people that I've had on, just incredible minded people. I mean, I feel like one of the most blessed podcasters, YouTubers in the world, given the fact that I have a show that's mixed with some just incredible people, and I'm also able to do a lot of solo episodes with it, and there's just an incredible mix when it comes to this show. But I previously also had a guest, Dr. Dwayne Johnson, he's a preacher actually, and also resides out there in the DMV area where I grew up. And he was saying something when we did our interview. He said, you always know what the right thing is to do. You always know. You always know when it feels right. You always know. You just always. It's always the. No, that was not the exact quote. The exact quote was actually, "It's always the right time to do what's right. It's always the right time to do what's right." And if I'm going back to high school version of As One, or even early 20s version of As One, when I'm fucking a single mother, and then I go from fucking a woman who was raised by a single mother, and then the next thing I do is go fuck someone who was actually a single mother, and you can kind of see how tight my mother and my sister are with me, and how, as I was growing up, how these women were taking advantage of the issues of me missing them and all that kind of stuff. But I knew, As One knew, I was wrong. As One knew that, but it didn't matter because, again, you're looking at some pussy, and now it's like, fuck it, we could be wrong after you bust your nut and all that kind of shit, right? You knew it was wrong while you were doing it, but you just did it anyway. And I'm holding myself accountable because I know this goes on. I know, I see it every single day. I teach it. I'm in West Palm Beach, Florida, South Florida, to be like, this is specifically South Florida. The land, I mean, it's all over the world, but it is incredibly prevalent right here in this area where people come to vacation, people come to party, people come out here, and the wild hookups, it's almost like the norm. In fact, the guy Brad that I was interviewing, he was divorced twice. All right, I spoke to him and his partner. He runs his business with his partner now. Shout out to Yvonne and Brad. But both of them were in long, like, decade-long marriages that had bad breakups, and they had kids together. They had kids with their previous spouses, and they spend time. And again, I spoke to both of them, and I will close you out soon. I just want to make sure I get this point. But they met each other And the way she describes it is they had long conversations with each other and they did not allow things to get physical because they realized how easy that road is to slip down. So I challenge you guys. I encourage you guys. Use my transparency. Use my hurt. Use everything that I have expressed to you throughout this entire episode. All the things that I've lived through. Use it. Use it as an example. Don't go down that road. Don't go down the road of finding people or trying to chase after people or go after people who make life quote unquote easier for you. No. Deal with your shit yourself. Look yourself in the mirror every fucking day. Deal with your shit. Show up. Heal yourself from the things that you have dealt with in your past. Show up in the world and become a magnetic person to attract exactly who is for you. That's how you avoid it. You go and deal with the shit that you have had to deal with in your previous life. Become aware of it. All right, become aware of it and know when you're doing it the wrong way. That's the answer. Just so we have a clear answer here of how to avoid trauma bonds. I want to make sure that question is clearly answered. Make sure you become aware of it, number one, and then go deal with it yourself. Once you feel like it's dealt, once you feel armed and you feel like, look, I'm tired of complaining, I'm tired of bitching about the same old shit. I'm gonna deal with my shit. I'm gonna take it on head on, right? I'm gonna challenge it. I'm gonna say, hey, look, that was my previous self. I'm gonna get better. I'm gonna get stronger. I'm gonna do things for myself to develop. At that point, you move on by becoming a magnetic person. I guarantee you, the right person will be drawn to you and you won't have to go around chasing stuff, because when you get in the habit of chasing stuff, that's when a lot of those difficulties, a lot of those problems, a lot of those those issues and things that hurt you in your past, that's when they start resurfacing, because you start to fall into that mindset that you had as a kid where you're just looking for acceptance. You're just looking for someone that'll be okay, that'll do, that'll just, fill in, you'll be able to decorate your house with and do a bunch of Instagram photos and social media posts with. You don't want that. You don't want that. It's hell. It's hell. Trust me. It's hell. All right. Deal with your shit, solve your own problems, become a magnetic person that attracts what it is you want in this world. All right. And that's with everything, not just romantic relationships, because you do that with, obviously, it starts with a romantic relationship. But once you do that and you do it the right way, a lot of the other things that everybody wants in life, all of that stuff will be attracted to you as well. All right. All that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.